The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with light, the walls glowing with strange colors that came from crystals older than any empire. Thousands of alien leaders sat in rows, their voices rising and falling like waves. And in the center stood a small platform, one that felt too small for the weight it carried. On it stood the representatives of Earth, a planet young by galactic measure but bold, proud and unbroken. They had been summoned here not as guests, but as prisoners dressed in formal robes that could not hide the iron in their eyes. The council speaker, a towering alien with silver skin and eyes like frozen glass, raised his hand and silence fell across the chamber. His voice was cold when he spoke. He accused humanity of crimes against balance, of expanding too fast, of building ships beyond their place. He said humans were dangerous, reckless, and unfit to hold a seat among the stars. His words were sharp like blades, but none cut deeper than when he declared that Earth's existence was a threat to the peace of the galaxy. The human ambassador, an old man with white hair and a voice that carried strength even in chains, stepped forward. He spoke of Earth's struggles, of wars fought and survived, of mistakes made and lessons learned. He said humanity only wanted to stand as equals, to trade, to grow, to share their dreams with the galaxy. His words echoed simple and honest. He looked at the council and asked them if they could not see the same will in human eyes that burned in their own ancestors long ago. But the chamber did not stir. Instead, laughter rippled through the rows of alien delegates. Some hissed, others sneered. One even shouted that humans were nothing but violent beasts dressed in stolen machines. The vote was called. One by one, the council members raised their hands, lights flashing in the chamber, and each flash was another nail sealing Earth's fate, guilty, 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 until the chamber glowed brighter than the stars outside. The ambassador stood still, his face hard as stone. When the speaker declared the final judgment, exile, Earth was to be cut off from galactic trade. Denied allies, denied fuel, denied the roads between stars. No ship from Earth would be welcomed in civilized ports. No human voice would be heard in this hall again. The council cheered as if they had won a great victory. But in the silence that followed, a chill spread that none of them noticed. Because the humans did not cry out. They did not beg. They did not collapse. They simply turned, their eyes calm, their steps steady, and they walked out of the chamber as if they carried a secret heavier than chains. Every alien eye followed them, confused because no one had expected such silence. No one had expected dignity in defeat. Outside the council chamber, in the long corridors that led to the docking bay, the human delegation moved like shadows. One of them whispered, "The council believes we are broken." Another answered, "Let them believe it." Their words carried no despair, only steel, only fire waiting for air. The old ambassador stopped before the ship that would carry them back to Earth. He turned to the younger officers and said, "They think they have cast us into darkness, but remember this. From darkness, stars are born." Back in the council chamber, alien leaders congratulated themselves. They believed they had ended the human question. They believed they had preserved their throne of power yet far away. Across the dark sea of stars, Earth waited. A world that had always endured storms. A people who had always risen after being struck down. No council could erase that history. No decree could chain that spirit. When the human ship left the station, its engines burned bright. The glow stretched across the void like a promise. Those who saw it from the windows whispered that it looked less like a retreat and more like a blade being drawn. In the silence of the ship, the humans sat together, their hands clenched, their voices low. They spoke not of despair but of preparation, of shipyards that would work in secret, of resources that would be gathered, of allies that would be forged in shadows. They spoke of children who would grow up hearing the story of exile not as shame, but as a call. And they swore that one day the galaxy would remember this day not as the day Earth fell, but the day Earth began far above. The stars did not change. But for humanity, everything had changed. The council had cast them out, but in doing so it had lit a fire, one that would burn across the heavens, one that would forge an empire greater than the throne that had judged them. The exile had begun, but so too had something else, something the galaxy was not ready for, the rise of humanity. The skies above Earth were once filled with lights, trade ships gliding in and out, alien freighters bringing goods, and human merchants bargaining across languages. But after the council's decree of exile, the skies turned silent. Docks stood empty. The stations that once buzzed with activity became hollow shells, and the people of Earth watched helplessly as their world was cut away from the lifelines that connected them to the stars. At first there was confusion. Many thought it was temporary. Some believed the council would soften. But days became weeks and no ships came. Markets starved, factories slowed, cities felt the weight of despair. The council had done more than exile humanity. They had tried to choke it, to make it kneel, and whispers grew in the streets. Are we truly alone? Has the galaxy abandoned us? But in the silence, something else stirred. Deep in the deserts of Mars, in the frozen tunnels of Europa, in the hidden valleys of Earth itself, old shipyards began to hum again. Engineers and welders returned to their stations. Men and women who once built for trade now built for survival. The council had stripped away commerce, but they had given humanity clarity. They could no longer beg for a place among the stars. They would take it. The first warships rose quietly, their hulls black as midnight, their names whispered like prayers, the Ark Royal, the Dauntless, the Spear of Earth. Each ship was built with stolen blueprints, salvaged parts, and human ingenuity. They were not as sleek as alien cruisers, nor as old as the Council's dreadnoughts, but they carried something the others did not. The determination of a people betrayed. Life on Earth became harsher. Families rationed food. Children grew up under skies empty of traitors. But instead of despair, something strange happened. People grew harder, stronger. They planted gardens in empty streets. They melted scrap into tools. They taught themselves skills long forgotten. And above them, in the hidden docks, warships took shape one after another. A year after exile, the galaxy forgot about Earth. But humanity had not forgotten. When the first pirate fleet came, hoping to prey on a weak world cut off from allies, they found a different Earth. 3 black warships rose from orbit. Silent and grim, they moved with precision. Their cannons roared, and in less than an hour, the pirate fleet was nothing but burning wreckage drifting in the void. Word spread, whispers carried faster than ships. Humans had warships, humans fought back. Humans did not die quietly. Some alien traders began to listen. Merchants in shadowy corners spoke of secret deals with humans. Small exchanges of weapons for food, fuel for ore. But every deal was wrapped in fear. Fear that the Council would discover. Fear that humanity was no longer weak in the cities of Earth. People watched the skies differently now. When a black warship passed overhead, it was not fear they felt, but pride. Children pointed at the streaks of engines and shouted, "That is ours, that is human." Mothers and fathers taught their sons and daughters that exile was not the end, but the beginning of something greater. On the edges of the solar system, hidden colonies began to form. Asteroids were turned into fortresses. Moons became secret arsenals. Old mining rigs became docking bays. From exile, an empire was slowly taking shape. It had no crown, no throne, only steel and fire. But it was real, and it was growing. The Council, far away in their golden halls, did not see it. They laughed at the thought of humans rebuilding. They told themselves that Earth was crippled. But some among them began to whisper uneasily. Spies they sent to watch Earth did not return. Ships that went missing were later found in pieces, burned by weapons that bore human design. The silence of Earth was no longer weakness, it was a warning. In the dark corridors of a Martian shipyard, the human ambassador who once stood in the council chamber walked among the workers. His hair now gray, his robes replaced with a simple coat. He looked at the half-built hull of a massive battleship, larger than anything Earth had built before, and he smiled. He whispered to the men and women around him, "They exiled us to break us, but they have only forged us. They took away our chains and gave us fire." Above, the stars still looked the same, but humanity's eyes were sharper. They no longer looked up with longing. They looked up with purpose. Exile had stripped away comfort, but it had also burned away weakness. And in that fire, the future of Earth was rising. The skies were empty no more, they were filled with shadows. With ships that carried the mark of Earth, the Council thought they had silenced humanity. But in the silence, a fleet was born, and the galaxy would one day tremble at the sound of its engines. The first whispers of the Black Fleet began not in the council halls, but in the dark corners of forgotten stations, where smugglers and wanderers shared stories they half believed. They spoke of black ships that hunted pirates on the edges of human space, ships that moved without fear, ships that struck with precision, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. Some laughed at the tales, but others grew uneasy, because every story carried the same detail. The ships bore no alien flag, only the mark of Earth. In the hidden shipyards of Mars, the truth was being born. Massive caverns dug into red rock shook with the pounding of hammers and the roar of furnaces. Engineers worked day and night, welding steel and shaping armor. Sparks fell like falling stars as hulls took form. These were not the fragile merchant ships that once carried goods across the stars. These were war machines, sleek and dark, built for speed, built for survival, built for vengeance. The name Black Fleet was not chosen by design but by sight. Each ship's hull was painted with a coating that absorbed light, making them vanish against the dark sea of space. Only the faint glimmer of Earth's blue and green insignia marked them, a symbol that would soon be feared across the galaxy. The first of these ships, the Ark Royal, slid silently from its dock, its engines rumbling like a predator waking. Hundreds of men and women stood in formation inside its steel halls, their faces hard, their uniforms simple but sharp. The captain, a woman who once commanded cargo haulers, now stood tall in her black coat. She looked at her crew and said, "We are not traitors anymore, we are guardians of Earth, and we will not kneel again." Cheers filled the corridors, not of joy but of fire. When the Ark Royal flew its first mission, it did not carry cargo, it carried silence. It stalked a band of raiders who had been terrorizing the colonies on Europa. The pirates expected a weak fight, humans begging for mercy, but what they faced was thunder. The Ark Royal's cannons fired with deadly accuracy. Its fighters swarmed like hornets in less than an hour. The pirate fleet was nothing but drifting debris. The news spread like wildfire. Whispers grew louder. Black ships had risen, not alien but human. Traders began to vanish near human borders. Some said they were captured. Others said they joined willingly. No one knew for sure, but the message was clear. Earth had teeth. Soon the Dauntless joined the Ark Royal, followed by the Spear of Earth, each ship more advanced than the last. Each one born from the desperate ingenuity of a people who had nothing but determination. Alien technology was studied, copied, and improved. What others had taken centuries to refine, humanity bent into shape in mere years. Not with grace, but with raw brilliance. Inside the shipyards, workers began carving out space for something greater. Rumors spread of a dreadnought unlike any seen before. A ship that would be the hammer of Earth. Its name whispered even before its hull was laid. The Invictus unbroken on Earth, life was still hard. But when black ships passed overhead, people looked up with pride. Children dreamed of joining the fleet. Songs were sung in streets once filled with despair. Exile had not ended humanity. It had given them a cause. Every citizen carried that cause, whether in the shipyards, in the colonies, or in the cockpits of fighters. The Council, blind in their arrogance, dismissed the rumors. They told themselves humanity could not rise so quickly. They told themselves that Earth lacked the resources. But some among them began to worry. When scouts sent near human space never returned. When outposts fell silent. When wreckage of fleets was found with burn marks that matched no known design. In a hidden chamber deep beneath Mars, the old ambassador who had once stood in the council hall inspected the blueprints of the growing fleet. His hand rested on the cold steel of a ship's frame. He remembered the laughter of the aliens, the words of exile, and he whispered, "They gave us exile. We gave ourselves an empire." Above him the Ark Royal, the Dauntless, and the Spear of Earth gathered in orbit. Their hulls gleaming black against the stars, they moved in formation, not ragged or desperate, but disciplined, like blades drawn from the same forge. They had no crown, no throne, but they had something greater, unity, in the deep silence of space. The Black Fleet grew hidden but unstoppable. Every ship that launched carried more than weapons. It carried a promise. The promise that Earth would not be forgotten. The promise that the Council would one day pay for its arrogance. And so the galaxy trembled at whispers. Whispers that soon would become thunder. The Black Fleet was no longer rumor, it was real, it was growing. And its shadow stretched farther with every passing day. Exile had created a weapon, and that weapon was ready to be unleashed. Far from the bright lanes of galactic trade, where merchant convoys glittered like strings of jewels. The humans built in the dark. Exile had forced them into silence, but silence gave them cover. The Council thought Earth was crippled, broken, forgotten. Yet behind barren moons and inside dead rocks, something vast was being forged on the far edge of the solar system. Old mining rigs once abandoned were reborn. They became fortresses. Their tunnels widened into hangars, their caverns filled with fuel depots. Human engineers carved war from stone. In the asteroid belt, whole rocks vanished from sight, swallowed by camouflage nets and powered shields. What looked like lifeless debris hid factories that never slept. Sparks glowed in their shadows like new stars being born. Colonies once meant for trade turned into outposts of defiance. On Titan, domes gleamed beneath the thick orange sky. Children played in streets lined with cannons instead of banners. On Ganymede, great ice plains hid underground foundries. The roar of engines shook the frozen crust as ships prepared for war. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was the heart of a hidden empire stretching quietly across the dark. The Council remained blind. Their spies sent near human borders never returned. Their reports ended in silence. The few who survived long enough to transmit whispered of shadows, of ships that seemed to vanish, of voices that promised death if they dared to come closer. Even so, most rulers in the Council laughed. They believed humans were still weak. They dismissed the warnings. They said, "Exile has tamed them. They are nothing now." But deep inside the Black Fleet's growing ranks, captains drilled their crews like never before. Every soldier learned to fight as one. Every pilot trained until their hands moved without thought. Battles were simulated endlessly. Some crews practiced in darkness with no lights, others trained with engines dead, learning to fight in silence, to strike unseen. The humans were not building only ships. They were building discipline. Rumors grew among alien smugglers. Some swore they had seen human stations on dead worlds. Others said entire fleets gathered in shadow. When asked how such a thing could be hidden, they only answered with fear. Humans know patience. Humans know how to work in silence. One alien merchant whispered in a cantina, "Exile has not killed them. It has sharpened them." In the Council's golden halls, debates carried on. Some called for harsher measures. Others said exile was enough. None dared to imagine what was truly happening. But one old admiral, his scales pale with age, warned the councilors. Do not mistake silence for weakness. His words were ignored, drowned by the laughter of rulers who believed themselves untouchable. Meanwhile, the human ambassador, now older, his voice softer but sharper, traveled between colonies. He spoke not as a politician but as a prophet. He stood on the decks of half-built dreadnoughts and told workers, "We were cast out, and in the dark we found our strength." He stood in colonies where families rationed their meals and told them, "Your hunger will become fire." He reminded them of the humiliation in the council hall. And each time he spoke, thousands swore oaths to the cause. The empire had no throne, no crown, but it had unity. Every citizen became part of it. The farmer who grew food in hydrodomes, the miner who cut ore from frozen rock, the pilot who trained until their eyes bled from strain. They were all pieces of a rising storm. Their banners were black, their engines silent, their weapons forged from desperation. When the Black Fleet gathered for its first full assembly, hidden in the shadow of Neptune, hundreds of ships filled the darkness, their engines burning faint blue. They did not drift aimlessly. They moved in lines, in shapes, in patterns of precision, their formation tighter than any alien fleet. On the command deck of the Ark Royal, the fleet's signal rang out. "From exile we rise across the void," every ship answered. Even the stars seemed to shiver as the Black Fleet disappeared again into shadow. Their empire remained unseen, but its strength grew with each passing day. Humanity had been exiled, but exile had not chained them. It had freed them from the illusions of peace. It had given them clarity. It had given them purpose. And now, hidden in the dark, humanity had built an empire that no one could see. Yet, the galaxy still laughed, the council still mocked, but the whispers spread wider. Smugglers told stories, soldiers dreamed uneasy dreams, traders avoided certain routes, and in the silence between stars, an empire waited, an empire forged from steel, fire, and silence, an empire that would one day step into the light. The galaxy believed Earth was quiet, but silence can hide thunder. The council thought exile had tamed humanity. Yet deep in the hidden docks, ships had grown, weapons had been forged, and soldiers had been drilled until their blood carried steel. The galaxy's first warning came not from whispers but from fire. On the rim of council space, a small alien kingdom ruled over 7 worlds. They called themselves the Ver Dominion. Their fleets were proud, their admirals arrogant. When they heard of Earth's exile, they saw opportunity to them. Humans were nothing but scavengers cut off from trade. Easy prey for raiding, the Ver King ordered his warships to strike, promising loot, slaves, and glory. The stars burned as their fleet advanced toward human colonies. But the Ver never faced the Earth that exile had made. They did not see desperation turn to iron. They did not hear the silence of drills that lasted years. When their first fleet crossed into human space, expecting weak resistance, they found themselves swallowed by shadows. Black warships rose from behind asteroids, their engines dim, their hulls darker than space. The Ark Royal led the strike, its cannons roared, and the Vare formation shattered in the first hour. The Vare admiral shouted commands, confident his larger numbers would crush the humans, but numbers could not stop precision. Human ships moved in perfect patterns, striking like knives. Fighters swarmed in disciplined lines, not rushing but cutting piece by piece. Where alien fleets spread wide and scattered, the Black Fleet stayed tight, each ship a piece of a blade, together forming a weapon no one had ever seen. The battle raged for hours, explosions flashing like lightning, but it was never truly a battle. It was an execution when the smoke cleared. The Vare fleet was gone, only drifting wreckage remained, and from that wreckage a message was sent. Not hidden, not whispered, but broadcast across every channel the Vare used. A human voice declared, "Exile does not mean surrender. We are not prey, we are the storm." The galaxy froze at the transmission. At first, many thought it a trick. Surely humans could not have destroyed a fleet so large, but wreckage does not lie. And soon merchants traveling near the rim spoke of seeing black ships patrolling proudly, their insignia glowing faintly, a mark of Earth against the void. Fear spread quietly through markets and ports. The Vare dominion raged. Their king furious, he sent a second fleet, larger than the first, determined to crush humanity. But the Black Fleet had learned from every fight. They lured the invaders into a nebula thick with storms. Alien ships lost sensors, they broke formation, and in that chaos, human warships moved like wolves, striking unseen, leaving nothing but fire. By the time the Vare realized their mistake, it was too late. Their second fleet was gone. Now the galaxy was no longer laughing. Council delegates whispered nervously. They reminded each other that exile had been punishment, not war. Some demanded stronger action. Others urged caution, but none dared to move openly. For every report spoke the same words. The humans fight like no one else. They fight to kill, not to boast. They fight as if the void itself obeys them. On Earth, the news spread faster than light. In crowded cities, in domes on icy moons, in mining camps on asteroids, people heard the words, "First blood has been spilled." And they cheered not with wild joy, but with a deep pride. Families lit candles in their homes. Soldiers stood taller. Children spoke of joining the fleet one day. Exile was no longer shame. It was legend. In the hidden shipyards of Mars, the workers carved the final plates into a massive hull. The dreadnought Invictus, larger than anything the Black Fleet had yet built. Its cannons could level cities. Its shields could withstand storms. On its prow were engraved words that every human carried in their hearts. "From exile we rise." The old ambassador stood there again, his voice steady as he addressed the builders and the young officers beside him. "The council thought to bury us, but in their arrogance they planted a seed, and now it grows into fire." The cheers shook the steel walls, echoing like thunder through the shipyard. Far across the stars, the Vare King sat in silence, his throne cold beneath him. The reports lay at his feet. His fleet's gone, his world's trembling. His pride shattered. He had thought Earth an easy target, but instead he had awakened a predator. The galaxy had seen the first blood of humanity, and it was not a wound, it was a warning. Earth had shown its teeth. The Black Fleet had drawn its blade, and from this day forward, no one could ever again call humans weak. Exile had become a crown of steel, and the galaxy would pay the price for every laugh, every sneer, every hand that voted guilty in the council chamber. The stars over the frontier outposts of the Galactic Council were calm. The stations floated quietly, their patrol fleets drifting lazily as if nothing in the galaxy could threaten them. For centuries the Council had ruled without fear. Their ships were large, their laws unchallenged. But in the silence of exile, humanity had been waiting. And now the waiting was over. The Black Fleet moved with discipline, their engines dimmed to shadows, their hulls blending into the void. At the center of the formation was the dreadnought Invictus, a mountain of steel bristling with cannons. Its presence alone was like a storm waiting to break. The captains of the Ark Royal, the Dauntless, and the Spear of Earth stood ready, their crews silent at their posts. Every soldier knew what this day meant. This was no raid, this was war. The order came in a single word, strike, and the void erupted. Black warships surged forward. Their cannons unleashed streams of fire that cut through the patrol fleets before alarms even sounded. Council ships spun in chaos, caught unprepared by formations so precise. So ruthless, human fighters swarmed like arrows, striking engines, severing communication lines, leaving the outposts blind and bleeding. The first station fell in under an hour, its towers burning, its fleet shattered. Transmissions of distress were sent but silenced by jamming fields. Those who survived spoke of ships that came out of the dark and vanished again. Like wolves circling prey, the humans did not linger. They struck, destroyed, and moved on across the frontier. Panic spread. More outposts fell. More fleets burned. Human tactics were unlike anything alien admirals had faced. They expected arrogance, a hunger for glory. But what they saw was cold, disciplined destruction. The Black Fleet wasted no shot, no movement, no soldier. Every strike had purpose, every death had weight. In the council chamber, fear began to ripple. Delegates shouted at one another, demanding to know how exiles had risen so fast. Some screamed for retaliation, others urged caution, but all of them knew the truth whispered in their hearts. Exile had not broken Earth. It had made Earth stronger. On the deck of the Invictus, the human ambassador, now more commander than diplomat, watched the battle unfold on vast screens. His face was calm, his voice steady as he told his officers. They laughed when they exiled us. They thought we would beg, but we do not beg. We build, we bleed, and we rise, the officers saluted, their eyes blazing with the same fire that burned in his. One council admiral stationed near the rim tried to rally his fleets. He believed the humans could be broken with sheer numbers. He gathered a force twice the size of the Black Fleet. His ships gleamed with gold banners and ancient crests, but when they clashed, numbers meant nothing. The Black Fleet moved like a blade, slicing through formations with ruthless efficiency. While alien ships turned slowly, humans struck from three sides at once. While admirals shouted for order, human captains had already executed the next maneuver. The battle lasted only a day when it ended. Half the council fleet was gone, the rest fled, leaving their banners drifting in ashes. Survivors whispered that human warships fought like predators who had studied every weakness, like warriors who carried centuries of war in their blood. The galaxy could no longer dismiss the whispers. Merchants avoided human space entirely. Council allies began to question their safety. In cantinas and markets, traders spoke in hushed voices. Exile was supposed to be a punishment, but it has become a crown. Humanity does not fight for survival anymore. They fight for vengeance on Earth. The news returned like thunder. Cities lit fires in the streets. Families celebrated the fall of council fleets not with blind joy but with fierce pride. The Black Fleet had avenged years of humiliation. Children drew ships on walls, naming them after battles they had never seen. Workers pushed harder in the shipyards, knowing every rivet, every weld was another nail in the council's coffin. In the deep shadows of human space, new war machines were being built. Ships larger than dreadnoughts, carriers with wings of fighters like swarms of fireflies, cruisers with cannons that could split moons, and every ship carried the same mark, the insignia of Earth. The council throne was no longer untouchable. For the first time in thousands of years, its rulers felt fear. The silence of exile had been broken, and the sound that replaced it was war. The day of wrath had come, and humanity had shown the galaxy that exile had not killed them. It had forged them into a storm. And as the Invictus sailed into the void, its engines burning brighter than suns, the humans whispered their vow across the fleet, whispered it like a prayer that carried from ship to ship, system to system. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The throne will tremble. The galactic throne had never known fear. For 10,000 years the council had ruled, their fleets unmatched, their laws unquestioned, their halls echoing with pride. But now those same halls shook with whispers, news of fallen outposts, shattered fleets and black warships that cut through the stars like blades. For the first time in centuries the throne trembled. Delegates shouted at one another inside the grand chamber, their voices sharp with panic. Some demanded that humanity be crushed with overwhelming force. Others warned that every attempt only ended in disaster. The Speaker of the Council tried to calm them, his silver skin glowing under the chamber lights. But his voice no longer carried the same authority. Each report laid before them was another wound, another proof that exile had not broken Earth. It had unleashed it while the Council argued. The Black Fleet moved closer. They no longer struck only at outposts. They struck at supply lines, at fuel depots, at fleets traveling to reinforce the rim. Every convoy that dared move through the stars near human space vanished. Some left burning wreckage, others left nothing at all. The message was clear. The Black Fleet was everywhere and no one could stop them. The dreadnought Invictus led the way, its massive hull gleaming black against the void. It was joined by a growing fleet. Not just the Ark Royal, the Dauntless and the Spear of Earth, but newer ships with names whispered like legends. The Defiant, the Iron Star, the Sentinel, each ship bristling with weapons, each one manned by crews hardened in exile, their discipline sharper than any alien fleet, their resolve unbreakable. When the Black Fleet finally appeared above a council world, the galaxy gasped. The planet of Velor had been considered untouchable, its cities glittering with towers of glass and light, its orbit guarded by a ring of warships. But when the humans came, they came in silence, their black holes blotting out the stars. Panic filled the defense fleets. Commanders shouted orders, but the humans struck before they could even form ranks. Velor's skies turned into fire. Human cannons ripped through shields. Fighters swarmed like a tide of shadows. Precision strikes disabled communications. Orbital stations fell one after another. The council ships fought bravely, but bravery meant nothing against tactics that felt like inevitability. The humans fought without pause, without waste, every movement part of a greater design. On the surface of Velor, civilians looked up in terror as the night sky lit with streaks of fire. Alien leaders fled to shelters, their proud banners burning in the wind. For generations they had mocked humanity. Now they saw black warships carving their pride into dust. When the battle ended, the humans did not conquer. They did not stay. They left the ruins smoking as a warning. Exile had forged them into a storm, and the storm had arrived at the gates of the throne. Back in the council chamber, silence fell heavier than any debate. Every delegate had seen the images. Every one of them knew what it meant. The humans were not just defending their worlds anymore. They were advancing, they were pushing into council territory. The speaker's voice cracked when he tried to assure them, "This is only a phase, we will respond." But no one believed him. Fear was in their eyes on Earth. The news of Velor's fall spread like fire. In every city, bells rang, families poured into the streets, not only celebrating victory but knowing the council itself was shaking. Workers in shipyards hammered harder. Pilots drilled longer. Children shouted the names of warships as if they were heroes from ancient myths. Exile had become not just survival but destiny. Aboard the Invictus, the old ambassador stood once more. His back bent with age, but his eyes still burning. He looked out across the endless stars and spoke softly to his captains. "We were cast out, treated as nothing, but now the throne shakes at our shadow. We do not bow, we do not beg, we rise." The captains saluted, their fists over their hearts, and their vow echoed through the fleet from exile and empire. The council could not hide the truth any longer. Merchants spread the word. Soldiers whispered it in barracks. Worlds under council rule looked at the sky with doubt. If humans could rise from exile, what did that mean for them? Rebellion stirred quietly. Fear cracked the pillars of the throne. And so the galaxy watched as black warships moved ever closer, blotting out the skies of proud worlds, and in every flame, in every wreckage, one truth became undeniable. The council's time was ending, and Earth's empire was rising. The galaxy had seen many wars, but never had it seen this. From the farthest colonies to the golden spires of the council's own worlds, one name echoed in fear and awe. Earth, what was once a planet exiled, mocked and starved, now rose like a storm that swallowed stars. The Black Fleet no longer hid in shadows. It sailed openly, its engines burning across the void, announcing that humanity had come to claim its place. The council tried one last time to resist. They called their fleets together. Dreadnoughts older than empires, cruisers that had once ruled the stars. Thousands of ships gathered near the capital world, banners shining, their admirals boasting of victory. They told themselves humanity would finally be crushed, but in their hearts doubt burned. They had seen what the Black Fleet could do. The humans arrived in silence, their ships dark against the stars. Then the Invictus appeared, larger than any council ship, its black hull swallowing light behind it. Hundreds of warships spread into formation, tight, perfect, a blade ready to strike for a moment. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then the storm began. The council fleets fired first. Rivers of energy and fire streaked across space, but the humans did not scatter. They advanced, shields glowing, formation unbroken. Their return fire tore through council lines. Precise, merciless, every shot finding a target. Where alien fleets fought with pride and ceremony, humans fought with survival in their blood. Their ships cut apart the enemy like surgeons with blades. Hours became days, battles raged above the council's capital. The skies turned red with fire. Council ships broke ranks. Admirals screamed orders no one could follow. But the Black Fleet did not falter. Every captain followed the plan. Every fighter knew their place. It was not just war, it was destiny unfolding. On the bridge of the Invictus, the old ambassador watched as enemy ships fell one after another. His voice calm but sharp. They exiled us, they laughed at us, but now their throne crumbles. He raised his hand and gave the final command. Advance, and the Invictus surged forward, its cannons blazing, smashing through the last defenses, its shadow falling across the capital itself. On the planet below, the Council's rulers huddled in their shining towers, their voices shaking as they demanded surrender terms. They begged for negotiations, they pleaded for peace, but it was too late. They had cast humanity into exile, and now humanity returned not as servants but as conquerors. The doors of their chamber shook as human soldiers marched through, black-armored figures carrying the insignia of Earth. The Speaker of the Council, once proud and cold, now fell to his knees, his silver skin trembling. He begged for mercy, but the human commander only looked at him with steady eyes and said, "Exile was mercy, this is justice," and so the throne fell. The banners of the Council torn down, the halls of power echoing not with alien voices but with the footsteps of humans. The galaxy watched in silence as the seat of power changed hands, not with treaties, not with promises, but with fire and steel on Earth. The news reached every city, every colony, and celebrations erupted like storms. Bells rang, children danced, workers wept, families cheered. After years of hunger and silence, they were no longer exiles, they were rulers. The Black Fleet had carved an empire from the void, an empire born from the pain of betrayal. The old ambassador stood once more before his people. His voice carried across worlds. They cast us out to die, but we endured. They called us weak, but we grew strong. They thought exile would end us, but exile gave us purpose. Today we do not kneel before the throne. Today the throne kneels before us, his words thundered, and billions answered with a single cry. From exile we rise. The galaxy could no longer deny it. Earth was no longer a planet on the edge of maps. Earth was an empire, its fleet stronger than any throne, its people united in a way no council world had ever been. The Black Fleet sailed across the stars not as shadows but as rulers, their black hulls gleaming with the mark of Earth, a symbol of vengeance turned to destiny. The council was gone, the throne shattered, and in its place stood humanity, forged in silence, tempered in war, unbroken in spirit. The galaxy trembled not at exile anymore, but at the truth that followed. To exile humanity is to create a conqueror, and from that day forward, every star carried the echo of their rise. Earth had built an empire mightier than the throne, and the galaxy would never be the same.